those again as well. Of course, this is going to require me to drop the upload schedule back down to a normal rate, but I'm still going to try to keep it more frequent than it used to be. Currently, I'd like to shoot for 2 videos a week. Have you ever been wrong? Like, horribly wrong? Hello everybody, and welcome back. It's been a little while, but 2 videos a week, right? Don't worry about that though. So, unfortunately, I'd like to come back with something more positive, but I just wanted to air out a couple of concerns and worries that I have for Season 3 as we start to get into it. I didn't want to make this video before the season actually came out, and I still feel like I'm a little bit early as they're still patching the game and making things a little bit more player-friendly, but I think getting this stuff out here could give a template for a possible couple of corrections to be made. I will actually go into more detail on the actual events themselves and the individual grenades, but for now I just wanted to give a broad stroke view of how the season is shaping up so far. If you aren't prepared for some overt negativity, you might want to head off. This is going to be less of my normal update coverage video and more of the Update 34 critique, so just keep that in mind. First of all, we'll start by going over the events. I've played about 10 to 12 hours of Plaguefall content so far. About 1 hour of it was in the experimental, and the other 10.5 were in the live branch. So far, I'll say that I find the actual mutator objective, the new primary objective, the contagion spikes, fairly annoying. Not super enjoyable to engage with, especially not in solo. They can be knocked out pretty quickly with good terrain generation in multiplayer, however they're an absolute pain in solo. The general flow of the event is you cover the contagion with goo, and then you either vacuum it up with the vacuum tool, or you'll have Bosco vacuum it up if you're in solo. However, having Bosco vacuum it up is extremely janky. It feels a little bit better after a day or so of the update being live. I'm not sure if there's been any changes made. I haven't seen it in the patch notes. But overall, it's just a very unintuitive and not very rewarding process. And a lot of times it feels like you have to be way too precise with the actual collection of the goo to a point where you'll be stuck looking for like one blister that's hidden around a corner or up on the ceiling to actually be able to kill each individual spike. That's not to mention that you can have up to 3 of these spikes in solo, which is a lot. It really feels like too much. You might notice that in this gameplay there's actually 4 spikes, which is thankfully not the case anymore, as in the first patch of the season the devs dropped it to a maximum of 3, but that's also a maximum of 3 up to 4-player multiplayer. I will say that this event is quite a bit easier with multiple players, as you can have one person shooting goo and the other person just directly following them with the vacuum, and you can knock it out in about 15 to 20 seconds if you're lucky with the terrain. However, like I said, in solo it's an absolute pain in the neck. So I can definitely appreciate it being dropped to 3 in solo, but I still think that's not far enough. It would take a lot of the randomness and unpredictability out of the equation, but I really think it should just scale directly with player count. If you have 1 player, it's 1, and if you have 4 players, maybe the limit could be changed back to 4, and it could spawn 4 spikes. Getting 1 spike in a 4-player game is almost not even something that's noticeable, so for some people that might be too far in the other direction, where it's not really anything to engage with, because it's, just 1 spike that your team rolls instantly. Whereas in solo, getting 3 spikes still can be very inconvenient, especially on time crunch missions like point extraction. So my recommended changes that I'd like to see made for the contagion spikes is making Bosco much more fluid, as you have to repeatedly ping for him to actually vacuum up the goo, and making the contagion cleanup much more forgiving, and say you only have to get 80% of the pustules around each one, whereas right now it feels like 95% has to be got. And that doesn't have to be limited to solo or anything, that could be applicable to multiplayer as well. I can definitely see a lot of the frustration being alleviated by making the cleanup procedure more forgiving. I will say that as it stands, if these changes are made and it becomes a little bit more faster, cleaner, and more intuitive to knock out these processes, the 50% bonus from the warning itself is actually pretty accurate, and I think it's well placed. If this warning had been left at a 30%, or God forbid even lower, it definitely would have been extremely annoying, and a lot of people that are interested in grinding XP would have avoided the mutation entirely. However, time will tell, I'm not entirely sure yet, but as it stands, I think that even in the current balance, it's possible for effective coordinated teams to actually get a good benefit out of this mutator. So moving on to the next event, the meteor. I still don't have a perfect understanding of how this event works and what triggers it to occur. However, I will say that I've seen it multiple times drop immediately after the drop pod button is pressed. So either I'm having a horrible run of luck and it's completely random, or there's a possibility for the meteors to drop directly after you press the drop pod button. And a couple of times I haven't been able to clear them before the drop pod timer ran out, and a couple of times I have. And speaking from that experience, I can say that a normal average team on Hazard 4 or 5 is really not going to be able to knock out those events before the drop pod timer ticks off. Obviously, I haven't spent a ton of time playing this, but I can say with a decent amount of certainty that your average team with at least 1 or 2 players that isn't exactly pulling their own weight is not going to be able to clear this while the drop pod related swarms are going on. The meteors can drop at other points in the mission, however, I'm not sure if that's completely scaling off of the mission objective completion or just randomly points in time. If it does turn out to be a random point in time, that raises a lot of concerns for me, as people who are playing missions faster are getting less rewards, and it's just a more intense version of the conflict between players who will want to full clear a Morkite mining mission and those who will want to get it done and get out. Some players might want to stay in a mission just standing around waiting for a meteor to drop. I believe that it's based on mission progression, but I feel like there's going to be a big misconception with a lot of players that think it's based on time and will aimlessly sit around in a mission waiting for a meteor to come. So that'll be a good myth bust to figure out as soon as I get more information. Other than the meteors dropping during the drop pod sequence, I don't have a ton of complaints with them. They don't feel super interesting, they feel rather easy. I'm not really asking for them to be harder, they're just quite uninteresting and similar to everything else we have in the game currently in terms of static defense objectives. There's something between a Haxi and a Doretta right now, where you hook them up with pipes, and then you simply repair them and keep them online until the thing breaks down. Not super engaging, it's a little bit different, and I can appreciate how smoothly it plays, but overall it's just not an incredibly interesting event, and the random nature of how it spawns makes it very hard to calculate what you're doing with it. I will say that the event spawning into the mission without no notice is definitely a new thing that we haven't seen, so I can't complain about that necessarily. It's just right now it dropping while the drop pod is inbound is quite frustrating, as it makes you feel like you're missing out on something if you're not able to do it. Next, to briefly touch on the grenades. I think the only one that actually demands any attention for its direct performance is the stun sweeper on Scout, the boomerang as many people will call it. It's really just awful. It's inferior to all the alternatives, and there's just really no reason to take it into a mission. As it stands, it is limited to hit 9 enemies, does pretty pathetic damage. It has an 8-second stun, which is pretty unheard of, so that's nice. But basically everything else, it just doesn't do as well as another grenade. If you want to stun and do a bonus of damage against electrified enemies, you'll want to take IFG, because it's not limited to simply 9 enemies. If you want to kill enemies that are hit by your grenade or completely deadlock them, you'll want to go with Cryo, which also has the ability to punish all flying enemies in the game very heavily. And if you want to directly distract a swarm of medium to high health enemies for a long period of time, instead of taking an 8-second stun, you should take Pheromones. So basically everything that this grenade does and is outdone by one or more of the other grenades. And everything that it does well, it's outperformed by at least one of the other grenades, if not 2 or 3. So it's a cool concept, I like the way it sounds, and it has a decent feel to it, but overall I just can't see a reason to use it. In the, I think, half dozen missions I used it on, I just never had a moment where I pulled out the boomerang to throw it and didn't wish that I had another grenade instead. The other grenades added in the update don't have quite as extreme of an issue, however both the gunner and the driller grenades are very, very high in friendly fire damage right now, to an absurd degree. The spring-loaded Ripper on driller can kill a normal player in 2 shots, except for gunner because it's technically explosion damage, but the fact that it can hit you 2 to 5 times if you're in a small space is basically inexcusable for how much friendly fire damage it does. Fun fact, it actually does more damage in friendly fire than it does to enemies, 1.1 times damage. And the gunner's grenade suffers a similar circumstance, however it's due to some jank instead of direct maliciousness. The tactical lead burster, you throw it down and it just sprays bullets in every direction. However, due to the way that grenade physics are kind of janky as the game has evolved and they've only really gotten worse over time, it can cause this grenade to get hit by intangible objects while it's flying through the air and drop directly at your feet or before you would have expected it to. This could light you or your teammates up with a hail of bullets that you just weren't counting on. It does less friendly fire damage than the Ripper. It doesn't tend to kill players instantly, but it's still pretty inexcusable for how likely this grenade is to shred your teammates. This is significantly worse than cluster grenades ever were for friendly fire. The NG's grenade is a little unsatisfying in my opinion. Having a swarm of drones is cool, but the actual feeling as you use it on enemies is pretty middling as they just kind of ping around and bounce off of enemies. It does decent damage, don't get me wrong, it's just the feedback isn't incredible. It's probably the best grenade out of the bunch and the one that I'm most likely to use, as it fills the role that I use proxies for mostly. And for me, the shredders kind of fill the same role in that whenever I'm about to back down from a fight, I can throw the shredders down and they'll usually eliminate some of the bugs that are coming up on me. So it kind of performs the same way as a proxy mine, it just is a little bit less risky to my own safety, so it kind of does better than the proxies do for what I want it for. And don't get me wrong, the lead burster and Ripper are usable and they have use cases and they actually outperform the other grenades in some scenarios. It's just the friendly fire on them right now is basically inexcusable for actual gameplay at high levels. Overall, the balance and changes were pretty insignificant across the board aside from GK2, which saw some pretty good balance changes in general. Made the weapon a lot more competitive with its peers. I still wouldn't say that it necessarily outperforms M1 on its best builds, but GK2 with its overclocks is definitely something that you wouldn't laugh at someone for using now, so I think that's definitely a step in the right direction. That and it has a base damage of 16, so you're now not having to take mods to one-shot swarmers. The fact that this took 4 years of development is absolutely mind-boggling to me. Other than that, we saw some general balance changes to other scout weapons primarily. Sabata got one new mod, and it's still basically incredibly underwhelming. So I'm pretty generally disappointed that Sabata didn't get more attention. I figured GK2 and Sabata would be able to get a rework in this update, but sadly it looks like all the love went to GK2 and Sabata's been thrown to the wayside. EPC got a combination of Plasma Burn and Flying Nightmare, so now it's Burning Nightmare. This is pretty solid. I used it with Sludge Pump for a little while and it feels nice. Especially for the fact that you can use normal shots to inflict fire as well as the charge shot, so generally I think Fire EPC just got a lot better in this update. And Driller's HE grenades saw a slight rework, I guess I'd call it, where they can now be cooked in your hand and thrown to explode mid-air. So you definitely have a lot more control of when they detonate now, and you can more easily whack a group of Mactera out of the air more effortlessly. So, full disclosure, I haven't really used new HEs more than one mission so far, so I can't speak to how good or bad they are, but it's definitely got me hopeful that they're going to be more effective. Also, there were some changes to their damage fall off, which, like I said, I haven't felt out in game yet, so I don't know how good it feels, but any buff to HE grenades is a positive. Obviously, there was a new performance pass along with the new events. So there's 100 levels of new cosmetics and items to get, as well as a new cosmetic tree. Obviously personal preference, but I think the weapon framework in the cosmetic tree is probably one of the worst in the game. They all just kind of look the same. There's really no thematic differences to them. They kind of just look like an off-color megacorp. So I can't say I'm hugely enthusiastic about all these skins. Maybe I'll warm up to them once I start putting my own paint jobs on them, which, once again, full disclosure, I don't have any of them yet. Just looking at them in the inventory, they seem pretty unimpressive. And now the kind of metagame stuff that is very frustrating for me and a lot of other people. And it comes in two different prongs, so we'll go over the first one now. So as a lot of people are probably aware, some planetary regions are out of range on the mission selection map at certain times. So if you log on and you just want to play Magma Core, sometimes you just won't be able to. And this has been excusable in the past, as really the only reason you want to play a specific biome is if you like that biome or you need the crafting minerals from it. However, Season 3 has introduced a new issue into this mix. So, looking at this screenshot for example, we have the 10 planetary regions, and 4 of them are out of range. However, say that you, like myself at this point in time, aren't exactly super enthusiastic about the new warnings if you're looking to play solo. So for this reason, this kind of pushes another 3 planetary regions out of your area of focus. And sure, not every mission in these regions has the modifier on it, but they are quite likely to in my experience. So in broad strokes, this kind of eliminates another 3 planetary regions for your mission selection, which narrows it down to 3 regions. And this is restrictive enough that I find it very claustrophobic and unenjoyable. If you open up the mission map and effectively only see 3 playable regions, that doesn't really feel great to me. I honestly don't have any understanding of why the infection is across 3 biomes at a time. I thought it would be a much more interesting concept to see it in one biome specifically for maybe a full day. Especially now that we have season content and a focus on daily objectives, I really don't see a reason there couldn't be a daily reset for which biome is infected by the plague, and have it limited to one biome. I think it's fine if it continues to change on mission reset, but having it cover 3 biomes at a time is really overboard in my opinion. And additionally, if you went to the daily change system, it could also promote the possibility that it moves through the biomes and transitions between them. So say you could have it move from Magma Core to the neighboring sandblasted corridors, and then the next day it could go further south to the REZ. This could potentially promote some sort of like real-time feeling infection combating procedure. And if we really wanted to get off into the weeds, maybe even based on how many people play the infection and try to fight it back, could prevent it from covering 2 biomes at the same time for a day. And if people are really slacking in their duties, maybe then it could cover 3 biomes at a time until people fight it back more. Just some food for thought, but I thought that would make it a lot more interesting than how it currently stands, where it just randomly pops up another 3 biomes every 30 minutes. Because while I'm sure people that were looking to engage with a mutator wouldn't have any issue with going to a certain biome to play it, I think people that are trying to avoid the mutator for one reason or another, having it cover 3 biomes brings them a lot more negativity than it brings positivity to the people that do want to play it. I hope that makes sense. And the last and probably most agonizing change that's metagame related is the introduction of randomized promotion assignments and introducing industrial sabotage into this rotation. First of all, I know plenty of people that would always stack up to do promotion assignments at the same time. More than a few times I've had people in my Discord server mark their LFG with engineer promotion or driller promotion, and then they could have like-minded individuals join based on that assignment being performed. So having the assignments be randomized and basically not able to be stacked by groups is kind of weird. But more so, the introduction of industrial sabotage into the mix is just a bizarre choice. I know Ghost Ship gathers these statistics and knows how few people play industrial sabotage. And I know they made some tweaks to try to make it more accessible and enjoyable, but having played it a few times in the new season, I can comfortably say it's not enough. Industrial sabotage still isn't fun to play, and I don't think myself and many other people still enjoy it. So having it ham-fistedly forced into promotion assignments is very frustrating. It doesn't solve the problem, and yeah, it may make more people play it, but it's not going to make more people enjoy it. We just got done fighting robots for 2 seasons straight, and for all the people that didn't enjoy it, having to play more robot-related missions now than ever is going to be extremely frustrating. I rarely ask for things to be directly walked back, but this is definitely one of them. I don't see any place for industrial sabotage in assignments in its current balancing and implementation. I would be perfectly fine with industrial sabotage staying as a long and difficult mission if it was treated as such. But instead, right now, it's one of the least rewarding missions in the game for the time and effort that you put in. If the mission had an inherent plus 200% hazard bonus per se, and gave you an absolute ridiculous amount of minerals and XP, and kind of came out to break even for the time you put into it, I would find it much more rewarding and would probably play it more often. But as it stands, it's not a rewarding mission type, and playing it always feels like a chore. So being forced to play it even more is just not a good time. But that's really about it for Season 3. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of minor things, but overall, there's just not a whole lot of new stuff. I don't want to seem all doom, gloom, and overtly negative, but I can't say this season has sparked a newfound love of the game for me. It's really felt like a perpetual beatdown ever since we made the transition to seasonal content. Season 1 introduced a difficult, unrewarding mission type that was at least interesting, and new weapons that were fun to play with. Season 2 introduced more content that a lot of people didn't enjoy, along with some new weapons that people did enjoy. And now Season 3 has kept that previous content in the game, which players will continue to avoid if they didn't enjoy it, and really added very little of substance that will be entertaining to people for more than a few weeks. Already, after I've played as much as I have, the lithophage outbreak just feels like a chore, which it kinda should, because it's just a cleanup duty. Having it be a mandatory second primary just isn't what I was looking for from the seasonal objective or theme. It really just feels like it should have been a new mission type and more heavily fleshed out. Season 3 has been in development for around 6 months, so having simply 2 new events, some new cosmetics, 4 grenades, and some balance changes just doesn't really feel right. And if we're waiting another 6 months for the next season, I'm a little hesitant to say how many players are going to stick around that long. I understand that a lot of people are on their introduction to DRG right now and in that early game passion phase that I went through myself. But having been around for a long time and seen the update and development cycle of this game, I can say that since the transition to seasonal content was made, the quality and quantity of content in these updates has dropped pretty significantly, as well as the time gap in between new content updates being much wider than it used to be. Like I said, I'm going to do more coverage on Season 3 content once I get a little bit better at handling all of it, but beyond that point, I don't have any exact plans for what I want to do in the future. Like I said at the beginning, some of the things I've complained about here might be changed by post-launch patches, but I'm trying to keep my expectations low in that regard. But that's about all I have for you today. If you'd like to join, become a YouTube member, get input on future videos and early access to new videos, you can check out the join button down below. If you'd like to catch me live, I stream over on Twitch. If you'd like to talk to me or any of my community members, you can find us over on Discord. And as always, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.